welcome to EyeOpener, powered by Siemens. And now, please welcome your host, Gugan Sangha.
And I know the other part of events is really utilising speaking opportunities. So I feel with these speaking opportunities, you could do them, joint with other partners. But my personal view is that it really helps to build credibility, especially when it's a topic within predictive maintenance. And being able to, talk about that and actually provide value to those who are interested in this whole topic.
Exactly. I think, again, it's a good opportunity to reach the audience, because a booth could only get you so far, because it's sort of window shopping. You're hoping someone stops and you're hoping that they're ready to buy. And in an ideal world, there'd be lots of people walking past. But again, it's a complex cycle. It takes a lot of education. So, like I said, a very good point. Speaking slots are a great way to educate a very niche audience. People are there who, hopefully, if you pick the right shows, whether it's manufacturing or Industry 4.0, they're interested in your topic, so should be more engaged. And we've seen, we have seen success off the back of that as well. And again, linking back to the user content, it's how can we record presentations? We've done that at events, recorded that and reused it again. So it's getting more out of that. On the face of it, it can be an expensive event, but if you've got the right people there and you do lots of all these different things, it can really, really be a lot of value. And that's what I've sort of come to learn, I guess. Maybe I wasn't in that mindset, say, 6-7 months ago, but I've come around to that fact that you can't just send people there to stand on a booth and hope that you get loads of success. There's a lot more to it than that, and you know that more than anyone.
Exactly. And I think the other thing as well, from speaking and working very closely with the sales team, I also believe when it comes to attending events, some individuals, especially our prospects, I feel that, first impressions are really important. So when you are attending events and you meet a prospect for the first time, from a sales perspective, that's really important, because they've seen you for the first time and they want to know more about the solution. And I think this kind of takes me back to the whole traditional sales process before technology. That's how it used to be. It used to be face-to-face. You had to essentially win them over for them to feel this element of trust to say, right, I actually really think this is going to be good for us.
But sorry to interrupt you. It's a good point how things have changed, because I think before, if everyone can think back to a time before the internet and Google, because another reason for shifting the approach is people tend to do their own research and will want to contact sales when they're ready to buy. But a lot of before the internet and CRMs and marketing automation, it was very hard to know that information. People had nowhere to research, so the only places they really had were these big trade shows. And so that's where they're more. It's not saying that they might be less important now. I still think there's a role, as I've said, for events, but they played, let's say the 90s, 80s or whatever, they played a massive role, because that was the way people could walk around and go, oh, that's a new product or whatever. But it's just changed as markets change and how people buy change, not even just in B2B and SaaS circles, in our own consumer habits have changed over that time as well. So it's natural things change. It's just, and that's why, in my view, you've always got to look forward at the next and how people consume today, and not think back, because it's very easy to fall into, that's how it's always been done. And I hate that phrase. That's the worst phrase you can say to me, because you've always got to push forward and think differently, and don't stand still and follow what. And at the end of the day, it's what's best for the customer or the prospects. Think about in their shoes. What's the easiest way for them to consume content and learn more about you? And generally, at events on a stand, I don't know about you, I've been standing on a stand tour. It's all right, but it's difficult to get across a complex. Well, it's not a complex product on the face of it, but the sales complex, it can be hard. From someone who's just like, I've never heard of Senseye. What's Senseye? And you have to start from ground zero. But if you can educate them a bit using content, then they might come to your stand and go, I heard about Senseye from your podcast. And then they come to your stand at the event. And that's why it's not one or the other. All these little bits, partner events, video marketing, podcasts, they all sort of come together and feed into each other to make to raise all of them in value, I guess, if I can say the word.
No, I completely agree with you, and I feel even with technology now, we as a company, and this is not just kind of focused on SaaS and that industry of predictive maintenance, but I feel that it's important that we have to adapt ourselves. We have to adapt our marketing to the way technology is changing. So like you mentioned, all of these elements and different channels that we use to market, they all feed in, because there's individuals who are still maybe stuck in that way of how marketing used to be previously.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I don't want to make any grand predictions, but it could be in 20 years' time that in-person events are just, no more, or at least vastly reduced. I mean, there's a lot of money in events, a lot of jobs in events. I'm not hoping that, but not to get too philosophical about this, but everything evolves and changes. You say like, oh no, that industry goes and you lose jobs, but then a new industry, say AI or whatever, might accelerate, or a new technology or whatever. So but the key from a marketing perspective is to keep your finger on the pulse and not just stick to tactics just because it's always been done that way, and just stick to traditional tactics. It's good to think of other things, but in order to do that, you need to be able to measure it and provide proof, the concept. Hopefully it's worked. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now. So hopefully it's worked. But yeah, with events or any channel, you've got to be able to show the return, or at least a good return on investment.
So Niall, I know you mentioned this, topic of return on investment, and I guess from our perspective within marketing, because of all these channels, how would you say you potentially look to measure the success of various campaigns that we're doing? Because I guess it really depends on what type of marketing we're doing, right?
Yeah, it's also how you break it down, because there's measurements at so many different levels. There's like the sort of very it's very high level. You break it down, like, 'cause you work, for example, in paid ads, so you might measure success of how many people have viewed, or how much, as a percentage, how many of them have viewed our content.
Yeah.
Because if you're seeing we're producing content from podcasts and videos, and it's like less than 20% of viewing the whole video, or whatever that metric will be, then there needs to be something changed there. But obviously, as you go higher and higher up the chain, and obviously individual activities require different measurement. I said about events that it's a difficult one now, because it shouldn't be just focused on lead generation, but then how do you measure the fact that you've spoken to 3 of your customers and set up a meeting with them for next week, and to continue to build that relationship for them to expand? There's a lot of things in marketing you can't measure, and I think as a marketing person you have to accept, or as a company, as a business, you have to accept there's something you'll never be able to measure in marketing. There's things like Google Ads, very transactional. You get this many people come through, it costs this much, and we got this out of it. It's very simple. But a lot of things, like the way we do LinkedIn ads and distributing content, it can't be measured, because we're not measuring on leads anymore. We're just trying to get our message out to a wider audience through those channels. But in terms of the high level stuff, the stuff that let's say management would care about. So in a traditional sense, it's things like leads, MQLs, SQLs. That's again the traditional model, and I don't think that's completely you throw it completely out the window. But I think if you look at it in isolation, especially with an approach where you're focusing on fewer but higher quality, then if you looked at some of the numbers, you think that's really low. So what you do instead, you take those numbers. So if you count an MQL as someone who's booked a meeting through a website or requested a demo, then you look on the other side, how many people have, after booking those meetings, have followed on to continue as a sales, go into our pipeline. And then it's actually a measurement of pipeline growth. So as in opportunity. So it's how many of those have gone from that first meeting to an opportunity, and then what's the and how likely is that opportunity to close, and what's the value of those opportunities? And then over time, you can hopefully see a growth in that pipeline growing through that the main factor is through the website, is converting through the website. Obviously, you have other, events and things like that as well, where you'll see that. But the majority will come through the website, and that's what you want to measure is, if I'm saying I'm producing higher quality leads that want to buy, then I need to be able to measure that that's actually the case, and that's the first metric. Yeah. And then it's then seeing if it's going through our pipeline and is classed as an opportunity. That's the next metric. And then ultimately, although for Senseye and other enterprise businesses, it can be 12, 18 months down the road to measure this, but it's how much revenues, is revenue growing, is marketing contributing to revenue, and those type of metrics. So it's not a easy answer. Again, it's like it's a blend of different approaches that you have to have, and you have to have a bit of common sense as well, dare I say it, to go, oh no, we can't measure this podcast we're doing now. Like, you work for a lot of companies and they'd say, how many leads, Google, are you getting out of this podcast today? And it's like, well, it's not the point. And yeah, that's what I would say. So it's measure what you can and other things. And actually, on that point, when I talk about the other important point about this is, so the main conversion point for us and for a lot of companies, a lot of SaaS businesses, is through the website. And so what you want on that form is a free text field saying, how did you hear about us? And the reason why, a lot of companies have a drop down with Google and direct or event or whatever, word of mouth. But the problem is that can lead to biases. So if you have Google at the top of the list, someone will just select it because it's top of the list. So, but with a free text field, so obviously someone could put in, whatever they want, but you do get a lot of insight there. So what marketing automation platform might tell you is Google search, organic search. So everyone's like, oh, Google SEO's doing a great job. But actually it says on the form, oh, I heard your CTO presented at a recent event, or, oh, I've been following you on LinkedIn for a while. And so again, when we talk about return on investment channels, that's where you'll start to see if a podcast is working, or a LinkedIn strategy is working, because it'll start cropping up more and more people saying, oh yeah, I heard about you here, and here, and that's what you want to see. And then it gives you, so it's combining those two attribution models. It's not to say it's sort of creating demand and capturing demands, and that what we want ultimately is for people to educate people enough so they're not having to Google predictive maintenance software, but they're actually already saying, oh, I'm just going to Google Senseye. That's ultimately what we're doing here.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So Niall, if you could ask our next guest on the show a question, what would it be?
Yes, that's a really interesting question. I've been thinking about this one quite a lot. And so I just thought something which I sort of think about pretty regularly. It's like, what actually motivates you to get up every day?
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode, Niall. Really appreciate your insights into this topic of marketing. Thank you to our audience for tuning in on today's podcast. Please like and subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for the next one in the series. Thank you.
To find out more, search Senseye Predictive Maintenance.